Welcome to Keto Meals and Recipes.com. You may recall that in the last video, I made a really tasty Vietnamese egg coffee. And as a result of making that coffee, I have a lot of my dairy-free sweetened condensed milk left over. So I looked through my recipe collection to decide what I could do with this extra sweetened condensed milk. And I thought that these tasty little cutout cookies would be the perfect way to use my leftover sweetened condensed milk. As a result, today's video will feature my sugar-free sweetened condensed milk cookies, or as some may call them, milk cookies. Not only will I be showing you how to make the vanilla version, but I will also show you how to make the chocolate version. And as a result, you'll be able to enjoy either the vanilla or chocolate mini cookies with your very favorite beverage. What's great about this recipe is that I make it a vegan recipe in this video, but you can also substitute the ingredients with non-vegan options if you prefer. This recipe makes 30 sugar-free sweetened condensed milk cookies with a macronutrient ratio of 4.6 to 1, 1.7 grams of total carbs, 1.1 gram of dietary fiber, resulting in only 0.6 grams of net carb per cookie. And for your information, here's the macro chart for the chocolate version of my sugar-free sweetened condensed milk cookies. As you can see, there's very little difference, and the only difference is the result of using cocoa powder. Here are the ingredients that you'll need for this recipe. And of course, you'll have to make the dairy-free sweetened condensed milk for the vegan version, or my sugar-free sweetened condensed milk for the regular version. The links for everything I'll mention in this video will be posted in the description below, including the link to my blog for the written recipe. And by the way, the blog recipe can be translated to any language you like. Now let's get started. Into a mixing bowl, add the almond flour, coconut flour, glucomannan, and salt. Whisk these ingredients very well to combine them. The next step is the same method that I used when I was making my traditional Scottish shortbread cookies, which, by the way, are really delicious, and I hope you check out that video if you like a very traditional Scottish tasting shortbread. I have found that the best thing to do is to grate about 1/3 of the frozen butter into your dry ingredients. Then take a moment, after grating the first third, toss and coat the butter with the dry ingredients. Doing this step will prevent you from having a big lump of grated butter in the bowl that it's really hard to distribute and coat. Then grate a second third, toss to coat again, and repeat with the last third of the frozen butter. Another benefit of adding the butter in this way when making these cookies is it will also make the cookies much lighter and more melt in your mouth. In other words, resulting in a much nicer texture. Now, using your fingers, roll the butter and dry ingredients until all the butter has been incorporated with the dry ingredients and the resulting cookie batter has a granular appearance. Next, pour the sweetened condensed milk over the cookie crumbs and work into a dough with your spatula. Now here's where you would divide the dough, or alternatively, if you just want to make chocolate cookies, you would add your cacao powder. Then pour it over the batter. And then, having done that, gently knead the cookie dough into a ball. If at this point you notice that your dough is still slightly sticky, what you can do is just add a little bit of almond flour or coconut flour to your batter. Just 1 tablespoon at a time. Work it in well, let it rest for a couple minutes so that the flour has time to absorb the excess liquid, and then, if needed, repeat with just 1 more tablespoon of either coconut or almond flour. Don't add any more than just 2 tablespoons. You would only need to add the extra almond or coconut flour if you're making the vanilla cookies. However, if you want to make the chocolate cookies, if you have to, adjust by adding just a 1/2 tablespoon at a time of cocoa powder, no more than 1 extra tablespoon. I'd also like to mention that although I prefer to use Dutch processed cocoa because I think it tastes less bitter, a lot of people do prefer to use just plain cocoa powder. Whatever you prefer, use that. Just be careful not to add too much additional flour or cocoa powder, because if you do, you'll find that your cookie will be very dense and very hard, and not the kind that I'm going for here, which is a moist, melt-in-your-mouth cookie. So now that my dough is no longer sticky, and I'm happy with it. I'm going to place it on parchment paper and cover it with cling wrap so you can see it better. And then using a rolling pin, roll the dough so that every part of it is an even 1/4 inch or about 0.6 centimeters thick. You should be able to do the cutouts right away, but if for any reason you find that your dough is too soft, just roll it out and then put it on a cookie tray and place it in the fridge for 30 minutes to chill a bit. Now, using a 1.5 inch or 3.5 centimeter cookie cutter, I'm going to cut out as many cookies as I can on this rolled out sheet. As you're making the cutouts, place each of the cookie shapes directly onto your parchment lined cookie sheets. And gather up all your scrap dough, reform it into a ball, roll it out again, and make more cutouts. Keep doing this until you've used up all of your cookie dough. As I said, this should make about 30 complete cookies. Now to make the top part of the cookie, I'm going to use a much smaller cookie cutout, or in my case, I'm actually using a large piping tip. And I'm using the 1/2 inch or 1.5 centimeter opening. Now all you have to do is place this in the center of each cookie, press down and make the cutout so that your cookies look like little mini donuts. Also, save and gather up all these cookie middles. That's because when I finished and re-rolled the extra, I could make 2 extra cookies. You don't want to waste any of this precious cookie dough. Now that I'm done with all my cookies, and they're on my cookie sheet, I'm going to put them in the middle position of my 320 degrees Fahrenheit or 160 degrees Celsius preheated oven and bake for exactly 10 minutes. When you take the tray of cookies out, the cookies will look a bit underdone, but I assure you that's exactly how they should look. Then place your tray on a counter and let the cookies stand in the tray for 15 minutes so that they can cool down because they're quite crumbly at this point. And then just simply transfer them onto a cooling rack so that both the top and bottom can dry out nicely. And as you're transferring the cookies onto your wire rack, place the solid cookies bottom side up. It's also a good idea to match each of the solid cookies with the donut shaped cookies of the same vanilla or chocolate flavor. Oh geez, I almost forgot to mention, place your sweetened condensed milk into a piping bag and put the piping bag into the fridge so that the sweetened condensed milk can harden just a bit. You want it still squeezable but quite stiff. It makes it much easier to work with that way. So now that my sweetened condensed milk is the right consistency, it's time to squeeze a little bit into the center of each solid cookie. The amount that you have to squeeze out is enough to cover about half of the solid cookie. I find it much easier if I immediately place the donut shape on top of the condensed milk and press down gently. And what you want is a bit of the condensed milk to fill the center hole. And then just repeat until all the cookies have been filled and assembled like this. Then place the tray of your completed assembled cookies into the refrigerator for about 15 to 20 minutes before you serve. As I mentioned earlier, these cookies are firm but have a nice flaky texture with a nice creamy sweetened condensed milk center, and they have a really nice melt in your mouth texture. These cookies are really addictive, so be careful and only have a few at a time, and your remaining cookies can be stored in an airtight container, which by the way you should line with a paper towel that will absorb any humidity in the container. And of course, store them in your refrigerator, since we don't use preservative in our cookies. These cookies should keep very easily for 5 days, and perhaps even a few days longer. That's if you can resist them that long. I hope you will enjoy them. For those of you who have downloaded my free e-cookbook that uses sweetened condensed milk for all the dessert and treat recipes, here's one more recipe you can make with either of the 2 sweetened condensed milk recipes. If you have any other suggestions for either sweetened condensed recipes or any recipe at all, dessert or main dish, please do let me know. I love receiving suggestions, and any comment or question is always welcome. I would like to thank you for taking the time to watch my video. And if you're new to my channel, just as a reminder, you can find the full written recipe in the description below. And please come back again and check out my next video when it's posted. Have a wonderful day and see you next time.